In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on February 17, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Grand Canyon versus San Diego State. Grand Canyon against San Diego State feels less like a casual February game and more like a measuring stick for where both programs sit right now. San Diego State has the loud building, the national profile, and that aura of a team that is very used to handling business at home. Grand Canyon walks in with the reputation of being the new problem on the block, the group that the league did not exactly ask for but definitely has to deal with now. The first meeting told on them in a big way, a tight 70-69 result where Grand Canyon did not blink as an underdog and forced San Diego State into a one-possession finish that could have gone either way. The interesting part is how similar the ingredients still look. San Diego State leans on that physical, connected defense that turns every cut and every catch into work, and the home crowd just turns the volume up on every stop. Grand Canyon answers with length, toughness on the glass, and an on-ball attitude that refuses to let opposing guards get comfortable, so games with them rarely feel like smooth, free-flowing blowouts. San Diego State prefers to grind teams down possession by possession rather than race away, which is great for winning but not always friendly to covering a chunky number against a disciplined opponent that already proved it can hang. Grand Canyon fits that annoying underdog label so well, staying attached, turning rebounds into second chances, and forcing the favorite to keep executing deep into the second half instead of coasting on talent or reputation. In a matchup where the home side wants control and the visitors are perfectly happy to drag this into another tight contest, the path where the underdog sticks around and keeps it uncomfortable feels much more natural than some easy runaway script. As our first pick for this matchup, the Grand Canyon Lopes to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. That first meeting sat right in that sweet spot where every possession felt heavy, and even with some mistakes and turnovers sprinkled in, the final total landed in a range that matched what you would expect from two programs that take pride in making every shot a chore. San Diego State builds from a sturdy, pack it in and contest everything kind of approach, closing driving lanes, sending length at the rim, and trusting help defenders to rotate on time. That style does not just stop opponents from scoring, it also slows everything down, since teams end up walking the ball up, calling sets, and trying to find any small crack instead of flying up and down. Grand Canyon does not exactly invite a track meet either. The Lopes lean on physical defense, solid rebounding, and a willingness to body up on the perimeter, so opponents rarely get a bunch of clean early clock looks. Games with this kind of personality tend to feature longer possessions, more half-court chess, and fewer easy transition buckets that spike a total. Recent stretches have shown San Diego State playing in plenty of contests where both teams sit in that modest scoring range, with the defense clearly setting the tone and the scoreboard reflecting that slow burn rather than fireworks. Grand Canyon can get into higher scoring outings when pushed by softer defenses, but against a locked-in, structured unit that packs the paint and contests threes, the Lopes often end up in more methodical rhythms too. Coaches on both sides know what this matchup means and how thin the margins feel, so shortening rotations, trusting defensive lineups, and milking the clock on late possessions all become very realistic choices that gently press the scoring ceiling down. When you stack those habits together, the more natural picture looks like another controlled, bruising game where points come in small, hard-earned doses rather than in big, wild waves. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Virginia Tech versus Miami, Florida. Coral Gables feels like the kind of setting where the home team can lean into comfort and confidence while the visitors are stuck trying to play catch-up in an unfamiliar gym. Virginia Tech comes in hungry and a little edgy, chasing a statement result, while Miami gets to lean into that familiar role of the team expected to handle its business in front of its own people. Miami has shaped its identity around attacking, not tiptoeing. The ball tends to move with purpose, possessions are used aggressively rather than cautiously, and the group looks far more comfortable when it is the one dictating terms. That kind of approach usually plays very well at home, where energy turns into momentum and momentum turns into little scoring spurts that can flip a close game into a multi-possession cushion pretty quickly. There is a certain swagger in the way this team operates in its own building, and it shows in how willingly it pushes the tempo, gets downhill, and keeps pressure on the rim rather than settling for passive, late clock jumpers. On the other side, Virginia Tech often feels like that talented but slightly volatile group that can look sharp for stretches and then suddenly hit a rough patch when the environment gets loud and the pace picks up. There is real offensive ability there, no question, but the defense does not always travel with the same reliability, especially when forced into more physical and improvisational situations. When Tech is nudged out of its comfort zone, you sometimes see possessions get rushed, spacing shrink, and decision-making wobble, which is exactly the kind of thing that a confident home side can use to grind out separation over the course of 40 minutes. Depth and composure late can matter as much as raw talent, and Miami has the look of a group that can keep its foot on the gas without losing its shape, while the Hokies are more prone to those momentum swings that a favorite can punish. So when you line up the styles, the personalities, and the setting, the matchup tilts toward the home side being better built to play from in front, absorb the inevitable runs, and still keep the margin in that comfortable window bettors care about, rather than living on a knife edge and sweating every single possession. As our first pick for this matchup, the Miami Hurricanes to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Both teams are capable of putting the ball in the basket, and both have tendencies that lean more toward rhythm and flow than slow, grinded-out half-court rock fights. You can almost picture the familiar Atlantic Coast Conference pattern. One team strings together a quick 7-0 run, the other answers with a couple of threes, and suddenly you look up and the total has crept much higher than you realized. Miami's style naturally encourages more possessions, more early offense, and more chances for easy points. When it gets into a groove, it pushes off misses, hunts transition opportunities, and keeps probing until it finds clean looks, which keeps the tempo lively and the game from feeling bogged down. Virginia Tech, for its part, is not exactly built to slow everything down and squeeze the air out of the ball, and that willingness to trade possessions, even if it is not always ideal defensively, tends to be very friendly to anyone holding a ticket on a big number. Defensively, neither group profiles as a lock-you-in-a-cage unit that is going to smother every action for 40 minutes. They can both get stops when they lock in, but they also give up enough clean looks, enough driving lanes, and enough second chances that scoring runs feel more like a feature than a bug in this matchup. In modern college hoops, when you combine capable shooting, guards who can create, and a pace that tilts even slightly toward the faster side, totals can climb quicker than you expect, especially if both teams find even an average rhythm from the perimeter. Late-game dynamics only add more fuel. If the margin settles into that classic Atlantic Coast Conference zone where one team is chasing and the other is trying to close it out, you get the usual mix of quicker shots, possessions that start earlier in the clock, and the parade of whistles that puts players on the line. Free throws with the clock stopped are the friend of any over ticket, and this matchup has all the ingredients for that familiar closing stretch where the scoreboard keeps inching upward even as the seconds drip away. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. George Washington versus VCU. Siegel Center on a Tuesday night turns into a pressure cooker pretty fast, especially when the home team is sitting on a 20-6-0 record and an 11-2-0 run in league play. Books react to that kind of profile, hanging a number that expects VCU to win this thing by more than just a single late possession, and the public usually nods along. Action Network has shown that most of the spread tickets and money have landed on the Rams side, which fits the usual rhythm: big home favorite, high scoring, strong record. George Washington does not really fit the script of the helpless visitor that just hopes the clock runs out. Their offense scores in the low 80s on average and shoots around 47% from the field, and they rebound well enough at about 38 boards per game to avoid getting bullied on the glass. They can actually keep pace stylistically, which matters a lot when you are not just trying to steal a rock fight, but trying to stay upright in a track meet. The recent box scores tell a slightly messy story, but messy does not mean weak. They went through a rough three-game stretch, then went on the road to Duquesne and lost by only 2, 88-86, while playing with just 7 scholarship players because Rafael Castro, with that foot issue, and Boo Boo Benjamin were not available. Even short-handed, they pushed the game into the high 80s, which says a lot about how stubborn this offense is. After that, they came home and took care of Rhode Island 75-70 and then really sat on George Mason 72-53, which quietly showed a defensive pulse that had been missing before. VCU, for its part, is winning a lot, and no one can argue with that. They have taken their last 5 games straight up, which is exactly the type of thing that makes casual bettors feel safe. Against the spread, though, it has been a different conversation. They have only covered 2 of those 5, with margins of victory of +4, +9, +11, +14, and 1 outlier blowout at +26. Those are good wins, of course, but that pattern fits a team that gets the job done more often than not without always crushing the number that odds makers hang. Injuries shape the edges around that picture. VCU still has Christian Furman and Obaniah Okafor listed out in the front court, which chips away at their interior depth even if the starting group still looks strong. George Washington has Castro and Benjamin sitting in that gray area on the report, tagged as uncertain heading into the matchup. If one of them plays, the rotation grows and the offensive ceiling rises a bit. If they both sit, we already have proof from that Duquesne game that this group can still get into the 80s and keep the thing competitive. So you get a loud Jim, a favorite that wins more than it covers, a visitor that scores enough to survive swings, and a spread that feels as if it is charging a tax on VCU's recent win streak and brand name rather than on any clear golf in actual quality. As our first pick for this matchup, the George Washington Revolutionaries to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Both of these teams naturally play games that land in the mid-150s on average, and that is before you layer in a matchup where neither side wants to walk the ball up and stare at the shot clock. George Washington, on its own, scores a touch above 80 per game and allows right around the low 70s. VCU lives in almost the same neighborhood, scoring in the low 80s and giving up the low 70s as well. So a normal night for either team already feels pretty busy. The styles feed that rhythm. VCU is efficient, shooting in the mid to high 40s from the field and mid 30s from deep, and it gets to the free throw line often enough to keep possessions productive. George Washington is not far behind, sitting around 47% from the floor and about 36% from 3, with enough offensive rebounds sprinkled in to extend trips instead of walking back on defense right away. From a viewing angle, it looks like 2 offenses that know where they want to go on the floor and usually get there. Recent results back that up and make the projected tempo feel real rather than hypothetical. VCU has hung 99 points on Dayton and 89 on Loyola Chicago in the last couple of weeks. George Washington has thrown 85 on Richmond and 86 at Duquesne, even during that short-handed stretch that briefly pulled their averages down. Those are not one-off outbursts where a team hit every wild shot. They fit a larger pattern of games that end with both sides breathing hard. The injury notes that matter for the spread also matter here, but they push the scoring conversation in an interesting way. With the Rams missing those front court pieces, the rim protection is not quite the same, and that usually means easier finishes or help rotations that leave shooters freer than the coach would like. On the other side, if Castro and Benjamin play, George Washington gets more size and balance, which helps them score in a more traditional way. If they stay out, the Revolutionaries lean into smaller lineups, extra spacing, and more three-point attempts. Either version tilts toward points. It is just a question of whether they come from drives and post touches or from extra threes and quicker possessions. So now you have 2 offenses that already sit near the top of their league scoring-wise, defenses that are respectable but not suffocating, and a game state that encourages both sides to keep pushing rather than grinding the pace down. If one team heats up for even a 5 or 6 minute stretch and the other simply plays to its usual average, this matchup has plenty of paths to finish in a range that rewards people who backed a high-scoring script. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Baylor versus Kansas State. This matchup feels like one of those nights where the brand name on the jersey pulls people toward one side, while the home crowd and a bruised locker room quietly build a case on the other. Baylor comes in as the team with the prettier resume, sitting around 13-12 overall with a losing record in Big 12 play, while Kansas State is stuck at roughly 10-15 with only 1 conference win, which looks rough on a standings page but very interesting once you add a spread to the equation. On the stat sites, you see Baylor tagged with strong scoring averages, efficient shooting numbers, and plenty of offensive buzz, yet their recent stretch has been a lot more jittery, including that loss to Louisville that reminded everyone this group can look very normal when the shots stop falling. They already showed how ugly it can get when the threes are not dropping, only a couple of makes out of a big pile of attempts in that Louisville game, and that kind of volatility hits a favorite right in the teeth far more than it hurts a dog that just needs to hang around. Kansas State brings the opposite vibe, a record that screams trouble, a long losing streak in league play, and a very public meltdown of a home loss to Cincinnati that had everyone talking more about effort and attitude than about schemes. Yet those same scars have helped inflate the perception gap between how bad they feel and how competitive they have actually been against the number. They have been on the wrong side of the final score plenty, but have still managed to stay within striking distance often enough as underdogs that you can see the outline of a team that is better for bettors than it is for bracket talk, especially when the crowd in Manhattan gets loud and the game turns into more of a grind than a showcase. Then you have the coaching twist, with Matthew Driscoll stepping into the big chair after Jerome Tang was fired, turning this into the first chapter of a new era, and that sort of reset usually brings a very simple, very human response. Either the group collapses under the noise or it digs in together, and with a veteran voice taking over and a fan base that has already made its frustration quite clear, the expectation leans toward a proud, chippy effort rather than a flat one. On top of that, Kansas State still has enough spacing and energy to punish sloppy closeouts and challenge for rebounds. And when you look at the verified injury reports on both sides, with Baylor thinner up front and both teams dealing with guards and wings listed as out or questionable as of today, the talent gap tightens just enough that a focused, angry home team catching points starts to feel more like a live threat than a helpless victim. So while the raw standings and some computer projections tilt toward Baylor, the full picture, with form, context, injuries, and emotion all laid out, points toward a game that behaves more like a close Big 12 street fight than a comfortable road cruise, which naturally nudges the value to the side that is getting the cushion. As our first pick for this matchup, the Kansas State Wildcats to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Scoring-wise, this matchup looks like a shootout on the surface. Two offenses averaging around 80 points per game and two defenses that give up plenty, which is exactly the combination that leads sportsbooks to hang a big projected total and dare you to believe the scoreboards will light up all night. Once you start looking at how recent games have actually landed, though, the story cools a bit because Baylor's last handful of outings include some fairly moderate totals, like the more controlled win at West Virginia and the tight battle with Iowa State, with only a couple of truly wild scores such as the high-tempo clash with BYU standing out as real track meets. Kansas State's recent run has the same split personality, with that heavy loss at Houston and the embarrassing home defeat to Cincinnati drawing all the headlines, but several other games, both home and away, ending in ranges that feel much more like typical conference grinders than all-star exhibitions, especially once fatigue and late-game execution start to matter. Both teams rack up a healthy number of fouls and more turnovers than their coaches would prefer, and while that sometimes fuels scoring with extra free throws and transition chances, it often does the opposite, turning the game into a stop and start whistle fest where rhythm disappears, possessions get shorter but messier, and the overall scoring pace never quite matches what the raw offensive averages might hint at. Depth is another quiet factor, and the current injury lists show both rosters dealing with missing or limited rotation pieces, with Baylor short a couple of front court bodies for the season and relying on banged-up guards, and Kansas State nursing issues with several perimeter and forward options, which increases the odds of tighter rotations and slightly more controlled possessions as coaches try to manage minutes over the full 40. Layer on the coaching situation at Kansas State, where an interim staff inherits a group that was just publicly called out and is now under a microscope, and you get a script that leans more toward emphasizing toughness, shot selection, and defensive pride than simply running up and down and trading quick jumpers, especially in a physical Big 12 setting where whistles and nerves usually increase as the game gets late. So even if the season-long scoring numbers make this look like a game that should soar, the combination of recent form, foul and turnover profiles, injury-thin benches, and a high-pressure conference environment all tilt the expectation toward a total that has a better chance of slipping under that lofty projection than cruising past it. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. St. Louis versus Rhode Island. St. Louis walks into this matchup as the group everyone in the league has circled on the calendar. This is the team sitting inside the national top 20 with a record in the neighborhood of 24-1 and a spotless run in conference play. They do not just win, they separate. The numbers tell that story, with one of the highest scoring averages in the country, around the low 90s per night, and a defense that still holds opponents to the mid-60s. That kind of gap feels like you are watching a video game on rookie mode, where one side keeps getting easy looks and the other side is stuck in mud. Rhode Island, by comparison, sits in a more modest tier. A solid program, sure, hovering around a mid-teens wins total and stuck in the middle of the conference standings, but not living in that same national spotlight. Their profile leans on competing, hanging around, and hoping their guards can grind out tough possessions rather than overwhelming anyone. You can almost feel that in the body language when they play, especially when shots stop falling and everything has to come from effort and whistles. The real separation starts with how clean the St. Louis rotation is right now. The core that just handled Loyola Chicago on the road, with guards like Trey Green and wings like Ishan Sharma leading the way, is intact and active. Roles are clear, minutes are steady, and the group looks comfortable pushing the pace without worrying about who is supposed to do what. The only long-term absence that hangs over them is Kalu Anya, who is out for the entire season, and by now the team has fully adjusted to that reality. Rhode Island does not have that same comfort up front. Their backcourt still leans heavily on a creator like Tyler Cochran, who carries a real scoring and playmaking load. The concern comes with their big man depth, where names like Mokic and Muhammad Sow sit on the shelf with serious issues, and Jameer Tripp has been flagged as uncertain at times. That leaves the front line thinner than a coach would like, especially against a St. Louis team that throws size, length, and fresh legs at you in waves. Over 40 minutes, foul trouble or fatigue in a short front court can snowball into a scoreboard problem. Here is the thing. St. Louis does not just shoot well, they defend at an elite level too. They sit at or near the top of the charts in effective field goal percentage on both sides of the ball, which is wild when you think about it. They make their own shots at a crazy efficient clip, and they force opponents into ugly looks that you would not wish on a rec league rival. That is how you end up outscoring teams by something like 23 points a game. It is not a hot streak, it is a habit. Rhode Island, on the other hand, leans on a style that can get shaky against length and discipline. They like to attack off the bounce, hunt contact, and pile up free throws. When that works, they can make a gym feel uncomfortable for a while. Fordham showed the other side of that coin not long ago when they took away the easy foul game, forced tougher jumpers, and watched Rhode Island miss their last 10 threes while a lead slipped away and turned into an overtime loss. That kind of pattern is exactly what a team like St. Louis is built to repeat, with even better tools. The Billikens play at a fast tempo, sit in the top chunk of the nation in pace, and they defend aggressively without losing structure. Perimeter length swallows driving lanes, help rotations arrive on time, and suddenly those hard-earned twos and trips to the line become contested jumpers and rush decisions. When a team that already struggles with shot-making under pressure runs into a defense like that, the missed shots often turn into runouts the other way. You can almost see the tide turning in the middle of the second half, when legs get a little heavy and St. Louis is still flying. There is also the human side of a big road favorite. Sometimes you worry a group like this will relax. The recent track record suggests the opposite. They have thumped quality conference foes, including one of the league's better brands, by 30 or so, and they have gone past the century mark more than once. That tells you they do not ease off the accelerator just because the score looks friendly. If anything, they seem to enjoy sending a message. So when you blend the talent gap, the cleaner rotation, the injury picture, the efficiency edge, and the way St. Louis keeps stacking double-digit wins, the same story keeps popping into view. Rhode Island can hang for stretches on home energy and free throws, but over the full 40 minutes, the more complete, more explosive, and more disciplined side is the one that usually stretches away. The question is rarely whether they can take control, it is how big that control becomes by the final buzzer. As our first pick for this matchup, the St. Louis Billikens to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. St. Louis brings a pace that almost demands points, living in that top slice of the country for tempo. They are comfortable running, spacing, and firing early in the clock, which keeps possessions piling up. With that kind of rhythm, even a cold stretch can get covered up by pure volume. Their offense has already shown just how loud it can be. Hitting the low 90s on average and reaching triple digits multiple times is not something you fake over a full season. It usually means several things are happening at once. They protect the ball well enough, they get clean looks from three, they finish at the rim, and they push in transition off every miss they can grab. Fans love that style because it feels like you are always one quick burst away from another run. Rhode Island plays a very different kind of attacking game, but it unexpectedly works in favor of a high-scoring script. They are not a pure shooting clinic. They get a lot of their offense from drawing contact, living at the line, and hunting extra chances. So even on nights when the jumper is not cooperating, the points can still stack through free throws and hustle plays. It is not glamorous, but boxes do not care how the numbers arrive. When you mix one team that speeds you up with another team that hunts whistles, you often get a game that breathes fast. Possessions come quickly because of the pace, and each possession has a decent chance of ending with either a clean look for St. Louis or a foul drawn by Rhode Island. That combination of tempo and physicality tends to keep the scoring moving, even if one side is not especially efficient from the field. It is a little like a pickup run where one side is bombing away and the other side keeps calling fouls and shooting free throws. The scoreboard barely takes a break. Recent patterns from Rhode Island add another layer. In that loss to Fordham, once the Rams tightened up the foul game, Rhode Island's offense sputtered late. They missed those 10 straight threes, and the whole thing tilted. In a faster game, that same kind of stretch does not necessarily sink the total because those misses become opportunities the other way, and the pace keeps the ball flying up and down. You can have one side struggling and still build a healthy combined number when the other team is efficient and aggressive. Endgames matter a lot for this kind of view too. If things are stretched out, you often see the losing side extending the game with fouls, timeouts, and quick shots. Each of those decisions is a tiny gift to anyone cheering for more points. Trips to the free throw line, rushed threes, and transition chances can all pile on in the last few minutes. Even if the flow felt a bit choppy earlier, those closing sequences can spike the final total in a hurry. So between the speed of St. Louis, their ability to hammer away on offense, Rhode Island's knack for living at the line, and the way late-game chaos often turns into extra possessions and extra points, this matchup leans toward a lively scoreboard more than a slow grind. It is not built like a rock fight, it is built like a track meet with some wrestling sprinkled in around the rim. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below.